Here we are going live again, streaming for the third time today since the router went out in the middle of this second one. We're going to be talking about the 15 reasons we don't trust the media and the Mockingbird media versus Q. Nobody's come on live yet, so if you're listening to this, you're listening to the recording. And the only way you're going to see me ever live is you need to make sure that little bell on the right of the subscribe button is highlighted and says all notifications. I'm getting a lot of people telling me that that's being turned off automatically by YouTube. So there's a lot of censoring going on right now. All my videos are demonetized from the beginning. I'm having router problems now I've never had, and even notifications weren't going out. So who knows what's going on here? So please check that. We'll just keep on rolling here. I'm using their platforms against them, and so I was expecting this from the beginning. But let's get into this. 15 reasons we don't trust the media, and what is the Mockingbird media? What's that actually mean, and why are they fighting Q and QAnon? And why are they lying about QAnon? We're going to get into that right now. So let's get into these 15 reasons here real quick. Right now we have a bunch of people on board. We have, hey, good to see you, Diana and Vivian and another Phase and G2 Mama and Deborah. For those of you I want to apologize, this first 18 minutes is going to be a repeat because it cut me off at 18 minutes of about a 40-minute video. But we're going to dig into this right now. 15 reasons we don't trust the media. So here we are. Is Mockingbird media controlling your mind? Because Jim Morrison has a famous quote said, "Whoever controls the media controls the mind." Let me repeat that. Whoever controls the media controls the mind. With massive coordinated propaganda, they can get you to believe almost anything if you trust them. And this is the top 15 reasons we don't trust the media. So let's dig into this. First reason we do not trust the media is, if I can get my PowerPoint to go to the next slide. It's not cooperating right now. It puts me in editor mode here. So let me see if I can get my page down to work here. Just one second. Okay, PowerPoint, let's go. This is one of the disadvantages of actually doing these live. I'm gonna have to go to view normal real quick and make sure I get on. So we've got a bunch of great material here, by the way, of the top 15 reasons. So now I want to close this so that it doesn't gives you guys the most room to be able to read this at the large scale. Woo! There we go. So the 15th reason is fake news all the way back in the 1880s. We're talking about John Swinton, famous quote here, where he was a prominent New York journalist. This is probably said the night of sometime in 1880 when there was this big banquet and he was the honorary guest, and some person who didn't really know the press very well basically offered a toast to the independent press, and Swinton was outraged, and he basically said this is a quote here, and again the source is down at the bottom, the Labor's Untold Story, right? So you can go look at that yourself. But here's the quote that's just amazing. And it's true today, what he's saying. There is not one of you who dares to write your honest opinions. And if you did, you know beforehand it would never appear in print. I am paid weekly for keeping my honest opinions out of the paper I am connected with. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things. And any of you who would be foolish as to write an honest opinions would be out of the streets looking for another job. If I allowed my honest opinion to appear in one issue of my paper before 24 hours, my occupation would be gone. The business of journalists is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of Mammon, to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it, and I know it. And what folly is this toasting an independent press? We are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. Woo! Strong. Hey, Sharon, good to see you. Strong wording. You can just see that motion coming from him. And that was way back in the 1880s. person that was once the editor at New York Times. So here we go. Most of my details I'm going to give you going forward are from The Killing of Uncle Sam. It's a detailed book showing exactly how the New World Order was created and controls the media and creates and runs the CIA. The whole New World Order talks about Cecil Rhodes way back in South Africa before he met with the Rothschilds, etc. So this is going to be, there's thousands of notes on this thing, by the way. So very detailed documents if you want to really go see all the details of exactly where and you'll have to buy the book, but it's worth buying it. It's a Rodney Howard Brown and William Paul Williams, the most documented, real thick book. In fact, it's right here. You can probably see it. It's just the best information I've ever seen, summarizing really what you need to know about what we're taking down, the criminal enterprise here. So it's like a 450-page book, Killing of Uncle Sam. Worth it. Okay, let's dig into it right now. The 14th reason we do not trust the mainstream media is, if you look at chapter 4 here, the lure of the occult. So this New World Order was a vision in 1876 that Cecil Rhodes actually had. And he actually, he was in a Freemasonry, became the light bearer, and I believe he had a satanic vision of the New World Order, where basically one world government, the United States became part of Europe again, Britain, and they became one unified country, and eventually the one country, one world government, right? And in the 1890s, he started a society of the elect, these secret societies. And what they had agreed to here was to actually establish schools, acquisition of newspapers, creation of lectureships, and creating propaganda. Look at that. Newspapers and creating propaganda. They were all social Darwinists. They believed in British by power of natural selection, and they had evolved to the master race. They believed in reincarnation, completely non-biblical stuff, and the departed spirits can create greater truth. So that's basically mediums, which is non-biblical, and told not to do that by the Lord. And one of the major guys in this was a guy named Steed, who he worked with, who was basically a journalist by trade, and he was the most grounded in the dark arts. And he's a disciple of an occultist named Helena Blavatsky, who was into theosophy. And Rhodes, Cecil Rhodes, the guy who did the Rhodes Scholarships, right? He also was into this and had volumes of book on theosophy. So if you look at they were into not having wives. A lot of these New World Order people were, and they actually got into heavy homosexuality, eventually into pedophilia. So it's really bad stuff. These New World Order guys that really control most of our Council of Foreign Relations now. But they had massive fake news in the 1890s based on this. And you'll see in 1902, he started the Rhodes Scholars, and the best and brightest he could obtain in prominent positions. So who was going to be the prominent positions in academia, as well as politics and the media? So they actually brought these brilliant people to Oxford, brainwashed the New World Order into anti-godly thinking, as well as the New World Order, one world government. And massive money came into Rhodes from the U.S., and that fame came from the Carnegie United Kingdom Trust and the organizations such as the J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller. Massive money from the United States from the people that also ended up getting into secret societies and massively controlled everything with foundations, including our education and including the media. And so if you look at the 13th reason why we do not trust the media, going down from 15 down to 1, we're talking about fake news started World War I. You heard me right. Fake news started World War I. And look at chapter 12 here. You'll see the war to end all wars. There was actually a $500 million war loan. The House of Carnegie and Morgan intertwined once Carnegie co-signed a $500 million loan from J.P. Morgan and Company to the Anglo-French Financial Commission in 1914. It funded the Allied war against Germany and was the largest foreign loan in history, 5x the size of the $100 million loan that Great Britain gave for the Boer War. In such a large amount, the cabal had to assure they tipped the scales to the Allies, right? And so it was staged terrorism is what they did, right? The FFs here. An incident had to be created to provoke the American people to abandon the stance of isolationism and to enter the war. It came on May 7th, 1915, when the German sub sunk the Lusitania. Americans were not told the truth about this, though, that it was transporting 6 million rounds of ammunition to Britain. The manifest was hidden and under the orders of President Wilson. And the Lusitania was also instructed to proceed at greatly reduced speed without escort. And the British were saying, come over here, right where the U-boat was. Crazy, crazy stuff. Fake news caused this. In fact, the cabal planted fake stories about Germany in the MSM, including the New York Times, such as German soldiers mutilating Belgian babies and cutting off their hands and even eating them. Many more stories were planted, such as Catholic nuns, their breasts being cut off, all this false stuff, many of which later were proven false. On February 9th, 1917, Congressman Oscar Callaway inserted a statement into the Congressional Record about Morgan's ability to control and manipulate the national news. That's right, J.P. Morgan, the banker, controlling the national news. Morgan's men started with 179 newspapers and realized that he just needed to control the 25 greatest newspapers to control the narrative. They basically just did it by trial and error. And with Morgan's control of those 25 newspapers, the American people never knew the real reason why the doughboys were being dispatched to the trenches in France. And not only that, what's scary is they made hay out of it. That's chapter 13 here, you'll see in this book, and it says Wilson biographer acknowledged that the war had been escalated and prolonged to lay the foundation for the world government. And here's the quote that he read at the very end of it. It says, and the internationals had brought on the war, certain it is they proposed to make hay out of it. Literally prolonging and escalating the war on purpose to make more money as millions of, thousands and thousands of people died. Summary of World War is this. This is a really important summary. World War I was produced by fake news. No babies in Belgium being mutilated, nor Catholic nuns having breasts hacked off. And the Lusitania was such when British High Command lured the ship to a site where German U-boat was waiting. Bottom line, millions were sent to their death because they believed what they read in the newspapers. So now we go from 15 down to 12. Number 12 reason why we do not trust the media is fake news started World War II. Not only World War I, but World War II. The Hitler problem in 1942, within 2 weeks of the outbreak of the war in Europe, Walter Mallory and the executive director of the CFR, which is the Council of Foreign Relations, that's where all the New World Order people control everything in the United States. They literally control it. And Hamilton Fish, the editor of the CFR's periodical Foreign Affairs, complete propaganda, met in Washington with Assistant Secretary of State George Messersmith, another CFR member, to set up a study which could develop a wartime strategy for the U.S. The group, which met in secret, everything they do is secrets, became known as the War and Peace Studies Project. One of the tasks of the War and Peace Studies Project was the development of propaganda that would cause the American people to shed their isolationism and to support participation in the European war to make the world safe for democracy. Can you believe that? They always use these words that are completely false. It was really to make them wealthy, which we'll see here in a second. Chapter 22 talked about baiting the Nazis and the Japanese. The New World Order money cartel had much to gain from World War II, as war actually breaks down borders, they cause mass migrations, they give rise to new countries, promulgate diversity, and undermine racial structures of existing nations. That benefits that actually helps create that you need for the global government. And it was essential to bring the U.S. into European conflict. But America possessed no vital interest in the war, and America remained isolationist. So an incident had to be staged that was even more horrific than the sinking in the Lusitania, right? The two CFR groups, the War and Peace Studies Project and the Century Group, instigated FDR to ship 50 destroyers and millions of rounds of ammunition to Great Britain. And FDR closed German consulates, occupied Iceland to deploy depth charts against the U-boats. Just trying to piss Hitler off, basically, to lure him into making an attack. FDR even produced bogus maps saying Hitler's plan was to place South and North America under the Third Reich. The map was a forgery. FDR also falsely claimed that he possessed another document which showed that Hitler sought to abolish Christianity in order to produce the international Nazi church. but Hitler refused to respond. So that fake news he did not respond to. So the Rockefeller-controlled CFR again, Council of Foreign Relations, group started provoking Japan and talked FDR into putting crippling trade embargo upon Japan and eventually froze all Japanese financial assets. And by 1941, the U.S. military had broken the code that the Tokyo used to communicate with the embassies and were aware that the Pearl Harbor attack, and they actually informed FDR and others, but no warning was given to the men and women in Pearl Harbor. In fact, several weeks before the island was actually stripped of 2/3 of its surveillance planes and much of its defenses. The result was 2,000 Americans dead and 18 naval vessels sunk or heavily damaged. That's what you have. So basically, World War I and World War II were started by fake news because people believed what they read in the newspapers, and basically staged terrorism. Now, the 11th reason, down 15 to 11, that we do not trust mainstream media is all the fake news in the 1950s. In fact, it says there's 3,000 salaried and contract CIA engaged in some type of propaganda. This is Alex Constantine in his book Mockingbird, the subversion of the free press by the CIA. And in the 1950s, it says some 3,000 salaried and contract CIA employees were eventually engaged in propaganda efforts. Wisner was also able to restrict newspapers from reporting about certain events. For example, the CIA plots to overthrow the governments of Iran and Guatemala. We are not told the truth. 10 fake news in 1960s. So the 10th reason we cannot trust the media, going from 15 down to 1, is the CIA Mockingbird media was confirmed. So the word Mockingbird was labeled a conspiracy theory. In fact, in 1967, the CIA created that term to label anybody that. And so anybody who talked about Mockingbird media was labeled a conspiracy theorist. But here they were. And we had to wait 50 years for this. Not till Trump released these files just earlier this year did we find out that indeed here they admit to Mockingbird right down here. And they actually admit that the CIA employed some 40 journalists who doubled as undercover contracts. One of the journalists named in these reports is covering the assassination probe for one of the most widely read newspapers. They said 40 here. They're completely lying. In 1957, we have evidence showing over 400 of them. And we just read about how 3,000 of them were actually touching propaganda. But now we have over 400 that were literally paid double agents in the media. That's right. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's truth. Anytime that the fake news media uses the word conspiracy theory, that means you're right on target. They know you're right on it. And JFK files confirmed a hit list where they paid bounties of certain amounts. They actually confirmed that they're working with organized criminal elements, involved some contact with organized criminal elements. In fact, we know that right after World War II, when they couldn't get the funding they needed, they actually learned from the Chinese to actually sell opium into the jazz clubs in Harlem to actually create funding. So they actually became an importer into our United States of opium to fund the CIA. And most people do not believe any of this has started. In fact, it's accelerated greatly to bring in more money for the CIA as being the primarily importers of our drugs. And crazy stuff. And if you look at now, another reason not to trust the fake stream news media is that they actually worked with the CIA to create the conspiracy theory label. In 1967, the CIA created the label conspiracy theorist to attack anyone who challenged the official narrative, especially of the Warren report that said that Kennedy was only shot by one bullet. Now, 50 years later, we clearly see he was shot in the neck. We clearly see that there was that Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy. And most importantly, we know that Mockingbird Media actually was created. These are just kind of facts now that you can see from the JFK files. But it's 50 years late, all right, to get that information out because the Mockingbird Media covered up everything with this label of conspiracy theory to anybody that was not agreeing with the propaganda. So democracy and free market capitalism were founded on conspiracy theories. The Magna Carta and Constitution and Declaration of Independence and other founding Western documents were based on conspiracy theories. Greek democracy and free market capitalism were also based on conspiracy theories. But those were the bad old days. Things have now changed. That all changed in the 1960s. Specifically in April 1967, the CIA wrote a dispatch which coined the term conspiracy theories and recommended methods for discrediting such theories. The dispatch was marked PSYCH, short for Psychological Operations and Disinformation, and CS for the CIA's Clandestine Services Unit. So can you see it? They put their Clandestine Services Unit to give us disinformation and psychological operations to discredit anybody that did not agree with the propaganda they were putting out, the crap, false stories they were putting out, like the Warren Commission, as one example. The eighth reason we don't trust the, counting down to number 1 from 15, the reason we don't trust the mainstream media is because of their fake news in the 70s. Carl Bernstein said on CBS, he said, CBS was unquestionably the CIA's most valuable broadcasting asset. CBS President William Paley and Alan Dulles enjoyed an easy working and social relationship over the years. The network provided cover for CIA employees, including the least one well-known foreign correspondent and several stingers. It supplied outlets of news film to the CIA. 3, established a formal channel of communication between the Washington bureau chief and the agency, gave the agency access to the CBS newsfilm library, and allowed reports by CBS correspondents to the Washington and New York newsroom to be routinely monitored by the CIA. Once a year during the 1950s and early 1960s, CBS correspondent joined the CIA hierarchy for private dinners and briefings. So in the 1970s, they were in bed completely with CBS. And then we found out from the Church Commission that over 400 agents were in the CIA here as well. And it says that 3 cover-up tactics. Naturally, the CIA denied the existence of mind control program. We're talking about the MK Ultra program now. And denial is, after all, one of the 3 main federal cover-up tactics. Denial, along with ridicule and disinformation. So they deny it. They ridicule anybody who thinks it's there, Mockingbird Media like they did, and they gave you disinformation about it, right? It says 2/3 of the budget for propaganda. William Schnapp's testimony in Congress enraged the public when the bill for his black operation was revealed. About 1/3 of the whole CIA budget went to media propaganda operations. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars a year just for that. Close to $1 billion are being spent every year by the United States on secret propaganda. Secret propaganda. That's what we're dealing with here. Now, down to the number 7 reason why we don't trust the media. Fake news they gave us in the 1980s. Director of CIA William Casey was quoted here in the 1980s. He was the 1981 through 1987 CIA director, and he talked about Operation Mockingbird. He said, quote, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." Let me repeat that. This is what the CIA wants, and the Mossad, the corrupt part of the CIA, the corrupt part of the Mossad. They want, quote, this is Director William Casey, quote, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." That's the type of people we're dealing with in this New World Order. They control much of the government. Here's some more fake news in the 1990s. Is the number 6 reason we don't trust the mainstream media. Jesse Ventura said that Phil Donahue lost airtime due to not being for the Iraq War, and Ventura was not for the Iraq War, and so he was paid 3 years for not doing any cable. They took him off the air, and they just paid him for 3 years because they just didn't want a dissenting opinion out there. They control the narrative. They control who's talking about it. The number 5 reason why we do not trust the media is fake news started the Gulf War. Do you remember weapons of mass destruction? We attacked Iraq. Iraq had nothing to do with the 9/11 towers. All the evidence points right to Saudi Arabia and Al-Qaeda. Nothing to do with Iraq, but yet we use it as an excuse to go to war. Why? Because war makes these New World Order people rich, and it gets them closer to the one world government they want. The fourth reason why we do not trust the media is the deep state actually spies on us and controls the media. You remember when the NSA and Snowden found all the NSA, that was actually a CIA asset put in there to try to take down the NSA, who was actually spying on the criminals. So they actually had him do that to hurt our government ability to hurt the cabal. And then what did the CIA do? They went and created all that and then more and started spying and literally taking over TVs, like smart TVs, where they could actually put it on fake off mode, your Samsung smart TV, and actually record everything that you say in your living room. Not to mention all the tools they put on your mobile devices, your laptop cameras. They can control almost anything. So the CIA basically duplicated all the capabilities of the NSA. Why? Because that's where the cabal was running from primarily the CIA, as well as other parts of the State Department, etc., where the New World Order and the Council of Foreign Relations people all resided, primarily a lot of Rhodes Scholars. They actually would, for media people, for instance, that would not, or a political person that were good people that didn't want to participate in the illegal activity, they would spy on you just like they did Tom Cruise in the movie The Firm, he and his wife. They videotaped and audio taped everything to the point where they find something that they know that person's not going to like somebody else to know, and they frame them. They blackmail them. They control them by spying on them. That's the way these guys work. They're actual criminals in our government. The shadow government, the deep state, is real. This is how they get even more media people to obey. Now, I'll put a link to this, but this is a really intriguing graphic showing all these, if you just look at all these different outlets. Now, there's only like 6 major companies that control all the outlets. It used to be like 50 just 20 years ago, but because of all the consolidation. But you see CNN and all these, the Times and Time Magazine and Fox News, and you see the leaders of these areas. They almost all go to one or more of these areas. The Council of Foreign Relationships, CFR I was talking about, established in 1921. In 1954, they started the Bilderberg meetings, all these secret meetings, and the Trilateral Commission in 1973. Between these three, many of these leaders in the media go to all 3 of these. New World Order 4 a.m. talking points go into all their people to make sure that they control the narrative on a consistent basis. You are being lied to. That's all there is to it when it comes to if you trust the mainstream media. Here is another example in 2015 where you have both CFR members, Brian Williams, Katie Kirk, just 2 of just thousands of people that are all connected to the CFR, the Council for Foreign Relations. And there's an article here that talks about that I'll link down in below this video. Fake news in 2016 is another reason why we don't trust the media. It's the number 3 reason, counting down from 15 to number 1. In 2016, the U.S. government just legalized Operation Mockingbird. FBI can now impersonate the media. This is a September 2016 article where FBI agents conducting undercover investigation have now been given the green light to impersonate journalists. The Justice Department determined last week, effectively legalizing the government's most notorious propaganda program, Operation Mockingbird. You can go read about that here in this article that I'll link down below. And then another thing that happened in 2016 is there's articles on the Hillary email, on narratives on the WikiLeaks in 60 Minutes, and where you'll see newly declassified government documents reveal Operation Mockingbird is alive and well. It's a 2016 article, but it's actually going back to 2011. An agency of the U.S. government was exposed trying to control the public narrative over WikiLeaks in 2011 by influencing media outlets' coverage, as revealed in the latest batch of Hillary Clinton emails released by the State Department. The emails from Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs at the time, Philip Crowley, exposed the State Department's planting a number of questions and concerns with CBS News for a 60 Minutes piece on WikiLeaks. So the actual email from WikiLeaks that Julian Assange had released said, "I just received confirmation from 60 Minutes that a piece on Julian Assange will air Sunday night. He will be the only person featured," Crowley wrote. Quote, 60 Minutes assured me that they raised a number of questions and concerns we planted with them during the course of the interview. Wow. Corruption everywhere, guys. The number 2 reason, down from 15 to number 1, we're going to go. Number 2 reason we don't trust the media is the fake news in 2017 and 2018. We see it everywhere. The criminal elites in the CIA need Trump eliminated. Trump is using the military intelligence and the NSA to take down the cabal. It's a threat to all the elites, the world elites, the deep state, Hollywood, Silicon Valley, etc. That's why you see 94% negative coverage. That's why you see people in Hollywood calling him names. They know they're taking him down, the cabal down for their crimes. And you can easily recognize this yourself because of the exact phrasing you'll see if you just open up your mind and realize and question the reporting you're giving. And you see across all outlets, you'll see everything parroted, the same exact phrase going across CBS and NBC and ABC and across New York Times and Washington Post, etc. All the articles, all the newspapers are saying the exact same phrase, same broadcast, saying the exact same phrasing from the 4 a.m. talking points that QAnon tells us they get. So examples of that would be when Trump went down to Houston and there's Hurricane Harvey. And every newspaper, every broadcast said he had lack of empathy, lack of empathy, lack of empathy, lack of empathy, lack of empathy. Printed lack of empathy, lack of empathy, lack of empathy across all those news outlets, just parroting the 4 a.m. talking points they get. Charlottesville, after that event, Trump is a racist, Trump is a Nazi. Narratives everywhere. Other propaganda, like when we were trying to get the memo released and people like Schmidt some of the just corrupt people were trying to keep the memo safe and saying, no, you can't let it out. Well, the memo showed the corruption of the DOJ and the FBI. It was just truth. They wanted to hide the truth from America. So we started on Twitter saying hashtag and Facebook, hashtag release the memo, hashtag release the memo. Well, they put throughout everywhere that it was Russian bots. Russian bots. Lies. Complete lies of propaganda they want you to swallow with the blue pill. Others things that included like that saying that was the partisan document, which it clearly wasn't. It was clearly just exposing crimes and saying that Trump is obstructing justice, Russia. You hear it. The 4 a.m. talking points coming out every day. So that's the number 2 reason. The number 1 reason why we do not trust the fake news media is because the fake news that clearly comes out in coordinated fashion just last month. I'm going to give you a July 2nd and July 4th example. This is crazy when you look at it. This is talking about Michael Cohen and every single news outlet after the 4 a.m. talking points. Here you have Washington Post at 4:46. The Washington Post at 4:46 a.m. gave almost the exact title as CNBC, as Roanoke Times, as NBC News at 5:12, 4:59 at Roanoke Times. You've got The Guardian at 5:07. You've got the Daily Beast at 4:11 a.m. They were first. Here's somebody at 4:58, the CNN.com. All these articles all saying almost the exact same thing. Cohen, family, country, first, loyalty, not Trump. Cohen and his loyalty to first family and country, not Trump. Trump lawyer Michael Cohen says family and the president is his first loyalty. Boom, boom, boom. Fake news completely parroting each other completely. Now you look at Jim Jordan. They did a slander campaign on him with Media Matters and all these organizations giving the exact same information on this false story about GOP Republican Jim Jordan. We have to blow this up just a little bit. Accused of turning blind eye to sex abuse at Ohio State wrestling coach. When he was an Ohio State wrestling coach. And he says over and over again, all these right after the 4 a.m. talking points. Again, coordinated fake news, exact same phrase, or attacks on people, slandering people. Why did they pick Jim Jordan? Because he is exposing the DOJ and FBI corruption. Now, you have a choice, just like Neo was offered a choice by Morpheus, right? Morpheus right here offers Neo a choice. Stay in the Matrix, stay plugged into your current life, you'll live fantasy, you're going to live off propaganda, not know the truth, right? Or come out, get a girlfriend named Trinity, and go fight the war that's really going on. There's a war going on between NSA, military intelligence, Trump versus the deep state. This cabal-oriented mainstream media controlling cabal that gives us propaganda every single day, 4 a.m. And there's a war going on between those two. You don't even know it if you're just watching the mainstream media. Okay? So here's your choice. Take the blue pill, stay in the matrix, controlled fantasy. Stay in the blue pill world, get your propaganda, believe the propaganda, and you're just going to be living in fantasy. That's the blue pill. Or take the red pill, unplug from the matrix. Unplug, quit watching the mainstream media. Free yourself. Get to reality and truth and see the war that's going on for yourself and see how you can help take the criminal cabal and come together as we the people. Doesn't matter what race you are, doesn't matter what religion. This is not right versus left. There's just as much disinformation on the right as the left. So in summary, guys, are you fully red-pilled? If you're red-pilled, you're completely unplugged. You're looking for truth. You're thinking for yourself. You study and decipher for yourself, right? Versus the blue pill where we're in fantasy, plugged into the matrix. We're controlled by propaganda. We label truth conspiracy theories, just like we help the coined term the CIA created to kill truth and label it as conspiracy theory. So if you hear all the mainstream media saying it's a conspiracy theory, that means they're trying to hide. They do not want you to get there. And if this is 100% blue-pilled, and this is 0% blue-pilled, most people are 100% blue-pilled. They believe CNN and MSNBC and ABC and New York Times and WAPO, and they're just completely blue-pilled. And as time goes, they might start watching Fox News if you're a little conservative, and you might get 2% blue-pilled. But they have the 4 a.m. talking points with Dwan and all the liberals that are on there all the time. You can get blue-pilled in all the 4 a.m. talking points by watching Fox News. Now, there are some programs that really have been working with military intelligence, actually getting some of the truth, like through Sarah Carter, Tucker Carlson, Dan Bongino's done a great job on Spygate and Hannity. And as you start getting to some of those things, you'll start to red pill yourself a little bit. But it's very minimal. Until you really start getting into the real alternative media, and this is how Trump got elected, getting a lot of truth from alternative media. Unfortunately, they have now put all their guns that they were putting on fake news media at the 4 a.m. talking points, they've now put it into alternative media. They're literally paying off operatives. They're funded operations to basically get controlled opposition. Vladimir Lenin, during the Soviet Union days, said the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. Did you hear that? The best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. So are these people at InfoWars and some independent media, are they paid operatives? Or are they being threatened maybe? Or bribed? But I tell you what's happening is you have people like Alex Jones and Isaac Green and David Seaman and all these people now that are all saying Q's a LARP. It's a conspiracy theorist. They've teamed up with fake news media to lie to you about QAnon. All of us that go to Q proofs and the hundreds of proofs there are, and we see the truth being revealed by QAnon, we know it's true because we're thinking for ourselves. We're studying it ourselves. We're deciphering it ourselves. Q doesn't tell us what to think. He asks us questions. And to say he's a LARP after all this time, why would they put hundreds of articles and all their ammunition of fake news to say Q is a conspiracy theorist if it actually is a conspiracy? Just like they did the same effort they put into the Warren Commission to say everything that didn't agree with the propaganda is a conspiracy. Why? And so why are all these alternative media teaming up with fake news? Are they being paid off? Are they being threatened? But somehow there's this huge pull of all this deep state pulling you away from QAnon, wanting to get you, and eventually they'll bring you into all this crap like confusion and make you believe that flat earth is real, and they give you massive amounts of stats and massive number of videos on flat earth, massive number of videos about the Holocaust not even happening, and getting you to think in an anti-US way and become anti-Trump because they want the one world order. They need to take down the United States. So they'll merge and we'll ask for the EU's help. Help us. That's what they want. That's why they're trying to get alternative media. Even if you finally get away from fake news and you start getting alternative media, now they're corrupting it. So you really have to trust yourself, think for yourself, and unplug from the fake narratives. Be careful who you follow on social media. Be careful who you're watching. Q warned us of that. But we know alternative media has been corrupted. Why? Because of Drop 1822 as one example, where he says media and covert alt media. Full panic mode attack by fake news media and covert alt media. This one says you, the people, have the power. The movement challenges their forced narrative. The movement challenges people to not simply trust but being reported. Research for yourself. Trust yourself. Think for yourself. This movement is not about one person or a group of people. We, the people. We are witnessing a full panic attack by the fake news media and covert alt media affiliates, including foreign governments. They cannot contain or defeat what they do not understand. They do not understand QAnon asking all these questions and all these anons researching and us pulling together awesome information and giving you videos like this. They don't understand that we're all thinking for ourselves, and this is an amazing time of the Second American Revolution as we're waking up, the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening is happening right before us, and they are freaking out. They are in full panic mode. That's why they're attacking QAnon right now and wanting to pull you away from, if you don't believe the fake news, pull you away from the actual truth in QAnon and critical thinking. Here's another graphic he just did, 1871. You can go to QAnon.pub, and find this for yourself. And you'll see that the Mossad controls the CIA, the corrupt part of the CIA, etc. And they control U.S. politicians. John McCain talks to the 4am talking points. So does Chuck Schumer. You got Jeff Flake and people on the right talking a lot of 4am talking points. Even Ryan does sometimes. And you got so the politicians right and left. This is not a right and left thing. It's deep state versus we the people. But the most important thing over here of my message is that they not only control national news like in the BBC, they control the U.S. media almost completely. But also alternative media. It's a new level of sophistication where they're doing the Vladimir Lenin technique. Vladimir Lenin says the best way to control the opposition is to run it ourselves. That's what they're doing. They're paying off and consolidating it. Much of it under InfoWars, I believe. Even though there's much truth being taught in InfoWars, and it's a big part of people coming on the curve toward the red pill and thinking they're red-pilled. All this is pulling in. They're going to confuse you and try to take you away from the truth. Do not believe QAnon. Say QAnon is a LARP. Say QAnon is fake. Say QAnon is a conspiracy theory. That's what they want you to believe. Now, that's the video. That's the 15 reasons we don't trust the media. So my question is Mockingbird media controlling your mind? Have you gone over to alternative media and are you being convinced that QAnon is fake? Are you not thinking for yourself? Are you not using your own critical thinking? Are you not just being challenged by the questions being asked and seeing what the anons are writing? It's truth. Remember, Jim Morrison says, whoever controls the media controls the mind. So it's not only the fake stream 4am talking points media, it's also the alternative media now. So your work's cut out for you, but you can do it. Trust yourself, as Q would say. Trust yourself. With that, I'm just going to say a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, just thank you so much for leading the Second American Revolution. I can see your hand all over this country. You're going to be healing this nation by exposing the fake news media, by exposing the 4am talking points, exposing the burner phones they get each week, exposing people that are actually getting accounts from the EU sent to their kids' trust funds, etc., that are in the media colluding with the FBI, the media colluding with the different administration and with the Podesta group as an example. Lord, we see it everywhere now. Please expose it. Let people understand it so they won't be controlled. Allow them to really go all the way to the true red pill and really understand and think for themselves. Don't let them believe, Lord, not only the fake news, but also these alternative media people that are lying to them. Give them wisdom. Give us wisdom. Give me wisdom. Give us discernment so we can understand what's true and what's not true. Lord, we are just praying for the criminals to come out of our governments, the criminals to be exposed, the criminals out of the DOJ, the FBI, the academia, the Wall Street, Silicon Valley. Get them out of here, Lord. State, local, federal governments, out of the judiciary, out of all parts of the Senate and the House, Lord. We pray that you rip out the corruption and plant in its place righteousness. We ask that you just replace righteousness in all of these entities. And we thank you for giving us the wisdom and the discernment to really understand, think for ourselves, trust ourselves, and move forward in the great awakening. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, guys, that's this video. God bless you. Talk to you next time.